The pit. So, there was another bad day. It was about a month after my surgery. Beginning of September, a few weeks into the school year. A few weeks before I started radiation. My eye was pretty well healed, but they had to wait a while before they could put the little BBs in my head so the beam would zap the right spot. What I now refer to as the dime slot procedure. So I didn't have my dime slot yet. I was cleaning my room, and it was a true mess. Linda was cooking downstairs. My dad wasn't home yet. It was dark out. I was going through a pile of stuff on my side table when I came to an issue of the Walking Dead comic. No big deal. But for some reason that word, dead, stuck in my head. Then I remembered what Dr. Throckton had said when he looked at my post-surgery scans. That with any luck, it wouldn't come back. Like in my lungs or somewhere. Because if it did, there was nothing they could do for this particular type of tumor. He didn't think that was likely, but it was a possibility. Back at that time, when he told me that, I did something really weird. I just brushed it off, pushed it out of my thoughts. I blocked it out and decided not to dwell on it. Until that night in my room, straightening up with the dark of the night creeping in, when that conversation jumped out of my brain like the boogeyman. I could die. That was obviously an option all along, and I knew it. But in that moment, in that gloomy room, for some unknown reason, it finally sunk in. Like, really sunk in. And it sunk in hard. I felt the floor tip under me. I don't mean that in a fancy pants riding way. I mean it felt like the floor actually tipped under my feet severely and then dropped away. Like there was nothing beneath me to catch me. It was the weirdest feeling. Like there was an endless black space under me, and I was dangling there like Wile E. Coyote in the worst, scariest cartoon ever. I collapsed down to my knees next to the bed. And then I was crying. Out of one eye, of course, because I don't have a stupid lacrimal gland on the right side anymore, which just made me feel even worse. One-eyed crying. Not even crying. Bawling, maybe. Or one time I heard the word keening means crying super hard, but when I looked it up, it means crying for a lost loved one. So I guess I keened? Maybe I was keening for myself, as weird as that sounds. Crying at the very real, scary knowledge that I might not live through this. What if the cancer came back and they couldn't help me? I could be gone, and life would just go on. My friends would go to high school and college. New Star Wars movies would come out, just without me there to see them, like I never even happened. My dad would be wrecked. First his wife, and now his kid. Fortunately, Linda had KZAQ on in the kitchen, so she didn't hear me. I curled up in a ball, and it came out of me like a faucet, for maybe 10 minutes. Then I was left sniffling and catching my breath on the floor, wiped out, drained like a burst water balloon. Crying that hard is like running a marathon. That's when Linda walked by the room. She caught a glimpse of me crumpled there and freaked out. "Ross!" She came flying in fast and grabbed me before I could react. "Are you okay? What's wrong?" I turned and sat up as fast as I could so she'd know I wasn't dead. But she was already upset. There were tears in her eyes as she swept me into a tight hug. Oh, Ross, don't do that to me. What happened?" I used my sleeve to wipe my eyes and running nose. Gross, but necessary. I'm okay. I am. I just had a thing. A moment. She kissed the top of my head and rested her cheek there for a bit. And I had a flash memory of my mom doing that to me when I was sick. Or just sad. Then she held me out a bit so she could see my swollen eyes. Wiped her cheeks, which were wet as well now. Just bad thoughts? I nodded. Really bad. She leaned back against the side of my bed, but held onto my arm. Caught her breath. Do you want to talk about it? I sat for a minute staring at the stuff I'd knocked off the side table on my way down. I just started thinking about the worst case scenario. She nodded and chewed her lip. Oh, boy. You're fine, Ross. We got this. But I suppose that'll creep into your head from time to time. I pulled in a huge sniff. My nose was still running, and she went on. Maybe when that happens, you try to actively think of something else instead. 'Cause thinking about it doesn't do you any good. So you go draw, or watch one of your monster movies or something. So, live in denial? It was a serious question. She laughed. No, not denial. Just try not to dwell on it. Well, I slid over so I was sitting next to her. I wasn't really dwelling. This came on like a sneak attack. I was fine, and then it kind of pounced out of my brain like, boom. She nodded. Yeah, thoughts will do that sometimes. We sat there for a while, listening to the radio drifting up from the kitchen. A Maroon 5 song, and then something by Pink. At some point, I leaned against her, my face against her shoulder. And then we just kept sitting there for a good while. The storm had passed.